Alright, next we have the upcoming ranked game, Slayzer's ranked game, and this one is going to be massive. It's not a coalition game, it's not small nations, it's a modified vanilla game, modified by Vincinio to hopefully enhance the multiplayer experience a bit. But the thing to keep in mind here is that there are 21 players on the roster. We'll see how many actually show up, but that could be a very interesting campaign. So I'm fortunate enough to have Austria for this campaign, and let's talk about the home front first. So there are coefficients in effect, which means there's a limit to how many nations and which nations you can call into any war, whether offensive or defensive. So Austria has a coefficient of 42. Russia has, I believe, a coefficient of 60, something like that. So anyway, I have worked out an alliance with Marconi, who is playing as Russia. And my main reason for doing this is if Austria and Russia aren't allied, what usually happens is Austria and Prussia will ally, and then it will be Germany and Austria against everyone, which personally I didn't want to do this game. I mean, that's sort of the normal way things go, but I really didn't want to do that. So just to switch things up, I'm looking to really focus on prestige and industrialization, and really, for myself at least, a relatively peaceful game. Hopefully not too many wars locally, but I might be expanding overseas depending on how things go. So Marconi, as Russia, has a number of allies. He is allied with the Ottomans to the south, which means since he's allied with both me and the Ottomans, we are sort of vicariously allied to each other. So I don't anticipate that I will have to keep any units along this border either. Marconi is also allied with Persia, and he's working out a deal with Sweden. He's giving them Finland in exchange for an alliance, and they'll be very good allies as well. So I'm also vicariously allied to Sweden via Russia. So let's talk about some of the other players, and I've got a list here on the other page I'll be going back and forth to. So Prussia is one of the new players, Lemley 42, and I don't know anything about him aside from he came from this other group who sort of merged into ours, that is for the ranked games. So my offer to him is that I will let him sphere Saxony and peacefully form the NGF in exchange for leaving the South German states alone. He hasn't yet taken me up on this, but if he doesn't do that, I'll make it my life mission to make sure he doesn't get Saxony. So that's really up to him. Now in the West, have fairly good relations with France. Hopefully we won't be going up against each other, but really it depends on who France decides to ally with. So at present, nothing's been set in stone, but if France decides to ally with Prussia, Prussia could, of course, declare war on me, and then France could come in. Or, more likely, Sardinia and Piedmont might decide to come after me or my vassal states, my spherelings, and call France in. So we'll see what happens there. Let's see, who's France? France is Fusilier, who had a pretty great experience with in the last ranked game I took part in. Slayzer is Sardinia Piedmont. He, of course, will be going for very rapid expansion, probably going for Tunis first thing. And once he gets Tunis, he'll quickly rise to great power. And then he's going to try and destabilize this entire area. So my spherelings in the south include Parma, Modena, Lucca, and Tuscany. And as soon as he becomes a great power, he's going to try and strip all of these away from me. So I have to make sure he doesn't do that. Now, I'm not going to let him take Lombardia, at least without some sort of fair trade or agreement. And certainly not before anything happens. I mean, if he's not actually Italy, there's no reason for him to have this yet. So later time he might get it, but at least for now, we might do it diplomatically, but more likely he'll try and get it in some sneaky little war. But that's the thing I have to watch out for. So hopefully I'll have peaceful relations in the north. I have to fortify in the west to make sure France and Sardinia Piedmont don't march in through Venetia. So we'll be looking at allies elsewhere. Unfortunately, we don't have a two Sicilies, so there's no one in Italy to oppose Slayzer. There is a Spain. Spain, I believe, is one of the new players. It's Zerthkits, who I don't know anything about. UK is one of the new players. Name is DSHC. And my one concern with the UK is that he's probably not going to play as aggressive as will be needed My understanding is that this other group that's sort of merged into ours mostly plays co-op games, and in a ranked game it can be very cutthroat. So if he doesn't make a stand against some of the nations that he would need to make a stand against, then they could just march all over him, and he'll be sort of left behind and relegated to useless UK status. Alright, let's see what's going on in other parts of the world. Africa is mostly barren, which means opportunities for conquest-based colonizations are fairly limited. There's Tunis, but I probably won't get there before Sardinia and Piedmont does. There's Algeria, but of course France is going to get that. And there's Morocco, which Spain is probably going to take immediately. So aside from that, there are a few other options. Madagascar has been spoken for by France, and then there's the Middle East. There are a few other minor nations in Africa. Russia will very obviously be expanding to the south. We'll see how far they get, and they're probably working out some deal with the UK right now. There is a deal in effect. They will be splitting Afghanistan, where Persia will be getting the western half, and Russia will be getting the eastern half. Aside from that, nothing has been set in stone. Japan is Vincinio, which could present some problems for Marconi. This is really Marconi's major adversary in this game. So Japan, once it takes Korea and Manchuria, will then be able to flood Russia with units. And one thing that's different about this mod with this edit is that Russian regions have been greatly consolidated. So rather than having tiny states that only include a few provinces, these are now more like a risk map, where there's Kamchatka over here, which includes this massive chunk of land. There's Okhotsk. Middle Siberia is this giant chunk of land, and all the way over here to Urals. So with just 4 states or 4 colonies, this entire region is up for grabs. So definitely have to defend against Japan in that regard. Surprisingly, we don't have either an Australia or a Canada, although a number of other minor nations have been taken. So for example, Punjab is a player, and we'll see what happens between Punjab and Russia. I'm curious to see what goes on there, but very likely they'll ally or align themselves toward the UK, and maybe in return they'll get some more lands in India. Let's see, who else do we have? I already mentioned Persia. Ottoman Empire is Christian, hoping for a peaceful game here. I don't think he does too much in the way of backstabby things, but we'll see what happens. So I'm hoping to remain on friendly terms with him. I don't have any intentions of expanding south. Of course, if he wanted to release Bosnia, I'd be happy to take it off his hands, but I'm not going to go to war over it. And even if I did, I mean, Russia's allied with both of us, and a big part of this alliance chain is that we're trying to maintain the stability in Europe, at least in the eastern part. So we'll see what happens, and trying to maintain borders most everywhere else as well. Portugal is a player, Spudgun, who I don't know anything about, aside from the fact that he does not want to sell Angola to Russia, which I can't really blame him for. Let's see, going down the list, let's go over to the Americas now. This is going to be a lot of fun. Alright, we have a Brazil player, we have a Chile player, we have an Argentina, and we have a Colombia. This is going to be a madhouse in South America. Everyone's going to be scrambling for land. There's some shared cores, obviously, so some nations will be going against each other in this area. And there are a few other independent nations which are very quickly going to be annexed. Argentina is probably going to go for Uruguay first, Paraguay next, Chile is going into Bolivia, and Colombia is going to gobble up this area. Remains to be seen what Brazil is going to do, but they're probably going to try expanding either west or moving overseas, but they're going to have rebellion issues to deal with. There's no Mexico, which is a problem because Guren, the hyper-aggressive metagamer, is the USA. So without a player in Mexico and without a Canada to ally with Mexico, this is a massive problem. USA is going to steamroll Mexico. If they ever get into war with UK, if UK doesn't immediately release Canada, then UK is going to lose all of Canada to the USA. USA is going to sphere and annex everything in this area, and they've already stated goals that they're going to annex all of the USCA all the way down to Panama and maybe even further south. So as far as hegemony goes, USA is going to have control over the entire Americas, unless, and this is where the role of the UK is very important, UK has to step in here. Unless they just want the USA to win, which, maybe they don't care, and that's fine. But as far as balance goes, the only way to counteract this is UK has to keep Mexico on friendly terms and intervene every chance they get and make life a living hell for Gurn, which is going to be hard because he's one of the most experienced players in the group. So I definitely, if I were placing bets, I would place bets on USA going number 1 in this game. Myself, I'm not really looking for too many expansions. I'm just looking to have a fun time, but hopefully I'll be in the top 6 or 5. We don't have a Denmark, so Sweden will very quickly form Scandinavia, and that's almost a given. They'll just be given whatever lands they need. Prussia will probably be given any lands it needs to form NGF. An interesting development, we do have a Belgian player, which means there is a possibility, number 1, for Belgium to be wiped out and kicked out of the game by Netherlands invading. Netherlands is also a player. Let's see, who is that? Netherlands is Project Cerebral, who I think is one of the new players. And Belgium is Chad Johnson, who is also a new player. Belgium has a number of guarantees from larger nations, so I think there will be interventions if Netherlands decides to go after them. But if their allies are already at war with other people, you know, an opportunistic Netherlands could very easily declare war, and in a situation where no one else can really afford to intervene, just go in and mop up. So that's a possibility. But you know, if Belgium can remain strong, then that won't be a problem. Let's see what else. Surprisingly, we have a Naj player. We do not have an Egypt, so Egypt will probably go to the Ottomans. Naj will try to form Arabia, but depending on their relations with both the Ottomans and Persia, they could just as easily be kicked out of the game. We have a Dynam player, which I don't think I've ever seen before, but Dynam will be trying to form Indochina, so they may or may not be receiving help in that regard. Of course, this kind of throws a wrench into France's usual optimal strategy, which is to go for Indochina. So there's a possibility they might become allies with France. There's a possibility they might just get wiped out completely. But will be entertaining either way. That's Sugar Tits Jr. controlling Dynam. As I mentioned, we don't have an Australia, which again I think is kind of unfortunate. So we do have, however, 5 players, among whom all the immigrants to the west will be split. So I think that covers just about everything. Now for myself, I can't really give away my personal strategy, my opening gambit, but needless to say, I am allied with Russia, and I hope to maintain peaceful relations with all of the major powers around me. And as long as they stay out of the South German states, I'll be happy with whatever they decide to do, with the exception, of course, of attacking Russia. For anyone who might be interested in joining this game, we play at, I believe it's 1 p.m. Eastern on Saturdays, and these games usually run for about 4 hours. There are a number of nations that I think are quite interesting and are still open. Number 1 would definitely be Mexico. If you are experienced and want to take on a very skilled player, or even want to help slow down and balance the game, Mexico would be my number 1 recommendation. There is a Greece, which for whatever reason doesn't have a player, even though it seems like an obvious pick. Fairly well isolated, low risk, and high possible rewards should the proper circumstances arise. We don't have a 2 Sicilies, but if someone wants to go up against Sardinia Piedmont, that might be interesting. And no Bavaria. Bavaria usually is not taken for obvious reasons, but given that I am not letting NGF take the South German states, this might be a viable option for people. And then Australia and of course Canada, if those happen to be released. Those are other possibilities. So this will be an interesting game. Because we're going to have so many people in the TeamSpeak, I'm not going to be editing this video. That is, I'm not going to be going for highlights. There's going to be so much talking, it's going to be impossible to edit it, so I'm simply going to chop it up into 15-minute segments and post it as is. And that'll be the series. So look forward to that. Thanks for watching, and if you have any suggestions for me, feel free to post a comment. Have a good one.